What's up, everybody? It's Chris from The Rewired Soul, and today we're going to be talking about a couple things. The first thing that we're going to be talking about is Oregon trying to pass a bill to decriminalize drugs, and there's some extra information on that, and we're going to dive into that. But then we're going to kind of broaden it and talk about the United States as a whole and whether or not we should decriminalize possession of drugs. Oregon has a bill right now that's moving its way up and is working towards decriminalizing drugs. What that means is that if you get caught with heroin, meth, cocaine, any of that hard stuff, it won't be a crime. But there's other news outlets starting to release more information where they're asking to quit using the word decriminalizing, because really what they're trying to do is change it from a felony to a misdemeanor. That is still a big deal. So what I want to say to you, Oregon, thumbs up.
Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you.
On the Washington Post, they have a quote from Senator Jackie Winters. She says, "We're trying to move policy towards treatment rather than prison beds. We can't continue on the path of building more prisons when often the underlying root cause of the crime is substance use." Yes, 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 Jackie. Preach. That's exactly what we should be doing as a country as a whole. And there's a lot of reasons for this. So a lot of you have seen that there's a lot of anger and hatred towards drug addicts, and they make these choices and all this other stuff, but there are certain areas and certain people who are realizing that this is in fact a disease. It is an illness. It is killing people. But for everybody out there who is so angry at drug addicts, we need to talk realistically real quick. So a bunch of you who watch this video, or if you happen to share it with other people, there's going to be people who are saying, lock them up, throw them in jail. Well, let's talk facts. A recent study from prisonpolicy.org has a whole pie chart, and you can kind of see it in the little graphic, but I'll put a link in the description below. Out of the 646,000 people locked up, 115,000 of them are in there for drugs. Next, in state prisons, 212,000 people who are in there for drugs. Then you also kind of take into consideration that there's 26,000 people who are in state prisons for driving under the influence of drugs. In federal prisons, we're looking at 105,000, that's 50% of the 211,000 who are in there for drugs. What you need to realize is that these numbers are also deceiving. When you start looking at the other statistics, there's 142,000 people in state prisons for burglary, 51,000 in there for theft. Now, what's important to look at in that pie chart, most of those people are in there because they were either under the influence or they were committing a crime to get more drugs. So sometimes you got to read between those numbers. Now, there was a comment the other day when I posted the video about Narcan and how Daniel Picard of Ohio wants to stop giving people Narcan, and there was a comment saying, well, these are our taxpayer dollars. Well, newsflash. Every single person that we're locking up and putting in prison, guess who pays for that? We do. So we need to understand that if we just keep herding all of these people into these prisons or into these jails, we're still paying for that. So would you rather lock somebody up and pay for somebody to be in prison for 5, 10, 15 years? Or would you rather pay your tax dollars to go towards getting this person treatment so maybe they never have to go to jail again? I'm thinking the latter on that one. That brings us up to the next issue. Thanks, Tupac, because you're actually correct with this one. So let me give you a scenario real quick. It's not even hypothetical. This is happening all over the country. Like my man Tupac just said, I'm just going to give you a scenario that's very real. Young kid growing up. He's growing up in the hood. He's growing up in poverty, right? Well, the three reasons that people turn to drugs or even alcohol are to get a feeling, to get rid of a feeling, or to have an escape. A lot of kids growing up in poverty don't want to be where they are, so they may turn to drugs as a way to escape their reality. The other thing to take into consideration is that when a child grows up in a neighborhood where maybe the drug dealer is the big baller, he's got the nice car, he's got the women, he's got the nice house, right? The child will look up to that person as somebody who's made it. So that child is more likely to become a drug dealer. What happens is that you have a 16, 17, 18-year-old kid, maybe even in their early 20s, getting locked up on drug charges. This is a felony, all right? This kid goes to jail, he learns his lesson, maybe he goes through some kind of rehabilitation for drug or alcohol abuse while he's in prison. Now, this kid gets out of prison. Well, guess what? There's a felony on his record. Whenever he goes to apply for a job, whenever he tries to get a home, not even a home, like just, we're talking about an apartment, they're gonna look and there's always a question on there, do you have any felonies? This kid can now not get a job or a place to live. Guess what that leads to? Depression, nihilism, thinking that nothing's ever going to change for them, even though they serve their time. So you know what they do? They go and back and they make money the best way they know how. They start doing drugs again. They start selling drugs again. And guess what happens? They go back into jail. They go back into prison. And guess who pays for it? You do. Yep, that's right. Stay woke. So places like Oregon, who are starting to defelonize drugs, they're moving towards a system where people will get misdemeanors. Misdemeanors are a lot easier to work with, where they will not destroy your future. So this is definitely a good thing. What usually comes up is the mention of Portugal when we talk about decriminalizing drugs. So Portugal is a great example of what happens when a community, when a city, when a state, when a country gets together and they actually see addiction for what it is, which is an illness, and they start working towards an actual solution. So what Portugal ended up doing was, back in 2001, they decriminalized drugs altogether. They were looking at it just in the same way I was talking to you about it, all the tax dollars that are going into housing these people who are suffering from an illness. So what Portugal ended up doing was, when people would get caught for drug or alcohol related crimes, and it was realized that this person does have an illness, here's what they did. All the money that they saved on putting these people in jail or prison, what they did is that they would find out what this offender's skill set was. So a lot of drug addicts and alcoholics have skills. They're great. Like, I've always had this personal philosophy that drug addicts and alcoholics are some of the smartest people that you will ever meet in your life. The problem is that we usually use it in the wrong direction, which is getting or using more drugs. But we are very, very hard workers, because once we get our mind stuck on something, like, it's getting done. And some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. So anyways, what they did was, they took this money that they were saving from putting people in jail or in prison, and they went up to an employer. So say the guy was a mechanic. So they would go to an automotive shop. They would go up and say, hey, hire this guy. He's fully qualified. If you hire him, we will pay half of his wages. So the automotive shop owner is like, okay. And what that did was, although it wasn't treatment, it was a form of treatment. It gives these people a purpose. So when these people start working, they're a lot less likely to go back to drugs and alcohol. Now they actually have something to live for, something to work towards. Now they have something that they can actually lose if they don't stop doing what they're doing. And Portugal saw this huge decrease in people having repeat offenses. Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't perfect. Addiction is a very, very powerful disease. There's some people who probably got that job and they're like, I'm gonna take my first paycheck and go get loaded. But they saw a huge decrease. So that's something that we should really be looking at. Now, the United States is doing this in some areas. This is not on a federal level. In some states, it's on a city level. In some places, it's on a state level. And what I'm talking about is drug courts. Drug courts are amazing. And if you don't know what a drug court is, what that does is when a person gets picked up on a drug-related crime, or an alcohol related issue, they if they are assessed to potentially having a substance abuse problem, they go to court and the judge will say, look, you got two options. You're either going to jail or you're going to treatment. Most people are going to say that they're going to treatment. The amazing thing is that pretty much everywhere that has started to use this drug court program has seen these huge decreases in people going back to jail or people relapsing. People who complete that program, I believe the number is about like 50 to 75% for those who complete it. Now, again, as like I said with Portugal, this is not a 100% success rate. But when you keep a drug addict or an alcoholic accountable for a long period of time, they have a much better chance of staying sober. By the way, sorry to get off topic for a second, but any of you who are going to 12-step meetings and looking at people with their court cards and looking down on them, I get it. I used to be that guy. But you need to realize that on an actual big level in the grand scheme of things, it's actually helping a lot of people. One of my best friends who is still sober to this day, he came in from the drug court program and now he has 5 years sober and his life is going amazingly. So in my opinion, we need to stop being so quick to judge each other on these types of things. Like, we're all in this thing together. But of course, that's just what I think. I want to know what your thoughts and your opinions are on this matter. So please leave your comments below. Let's have a discussion about this. And if there are any other topics that you want me to hit on, leave those down in the comments below as well. There is a ton more that I can do on this topic, but that's all the time I got for today. If you'd like to see more of this topic, give me a thumbs up to like the video. If you haven't yet, subscribe. Check out the other videos that I got. And for everything that we've discussed today, if you want to see the sources, if you want to get more information on it, be sure to check the description below. I put all the links. And remember, by educating other people, we can help to break the stigma of addiction, and soon we'll come together and find more solutions as a country to help each other out. So be sure to stay tuned, spread the message, end the stigma, and I will see you next time.